People always talk about how hard they tried, how much energy they gave something. And that's good. You've got to start somewhere. But here's the reality. Effort is just the entry fee. It gets you in the door, but it doesn't keep you in the room. It's the handshake, not the agreement. It says that you're willing, but it doesn't prove you'll stay. You've probably seen it. Someone shows up on day one full of energy. They're excited. They're motivated. They've got big plans, big goals, big ambition. They push hard, put in extra hours, talk about how serious they are. But fast forward a few weeks, and they're gone. The fire burned bright, but not for long, because effort without consistency is just noise. The world doesn't reward you for starting something. It rewards you for finishing, for staying, for showing up when it's no longer fun, when the results aren't immediate, when the excitement fades. Effort says you're interested. Consistency proves you're committed. And that's what makes the difference. That's what separates the curious from the serious. It's like walking into a gym and doing one great workout. You're sore the next day, maybe even proud of yourself. But that one session doesn't change your body. It doesn't change your health. Why? Because that's not how it works. Real change happens through repetition, through returning, through showing up again and again and again, even when nobody's watching, even when the results are quiet. And it's the same in business, in relationships, in personal growth. Starting is good, but it's not special. Starting is required. What matters is what comes next. What matters is what you do when it's no longer new, no longer exciting, no longer convenient. That's when the contract kicks in. That's when consistency starts to count. So that's what we're going to explore. Why effort alone isn't enough. Why consistency is the real currency of progress. And how to build the kind of discipline that doesn't just get you in, but keeps you going all the way to the finish. Effort is important. You've got to have it. It's the spark that lights the fire. But here's what you need to understand. Effort only gets you through the front door. It's not the furniture. It's not the foundation. It's not the roof. It's just the knock. It gets you noticed, maybe even gives you a quick start. But that's all. I've seen it 100 times. Someone shows up on fire. They've got goals. They're talking big. They show up early, stay late, push hard for a while, but then it gets boring or hard or inconvenient. And little by little, the effort fades. And the results, well, they never had time to take root because they never stuck around long enough to let the work compound. Effort is loud. Effort is impressive for a moment. But consistency is quiet. And it's always the quiet work that produces the real results. You run 1 mile today and tell everybody, but run 1 mile every day for a year and your body tells the story. You study hard for one test and hope for a good grade, but study a little every day for a year and your mind becomes sharp. See, effort makes noise, but consistency builds evidence. The danger is when people confuse effort for accomplishment. They put in a big push and think the job is done, but it's not done. It's barely started. You don't get in shape from one workout. You don't become wise from one book. You don't build trust from one good decision. These things take time, repetition, rhythm. The reward doesn't come from starting strong. It comes from staying strong. Now, I'm not saying effort doesn't matter. It absolutely does. You've got to start somewhere. But just because you started doesn't mean you're entitled to finish. Just because you showed up once doesn't mean results are on the way. Results are rented, and the rent is due every day. Effort covers the entry fee, but consistency, that's the contract. People love the start. New habits, new goals, new plans, they're exciting. But the new wears off, and when it does, you need something stronger than emotion. You need commitment. You need habits. You need a routine that works on the days you don't feel like it, because feelings come and go. But a contract, that stays. I've met people with talent, energy, big dreams, but they couldn't stick. They'd show up for a week, maybe two. But then life would happen, or they'd get bored or discouraged, and they'd disappear. Not because they weren't capable, but because they didn't understand that effort was just the start. And starting doesn't mean much if you're always starting over. If you want to build something, build a business, build a skill, build a new version of yourself, you've got to be willing to do more than try hard once. You've got to commit to show up again and again and again. That's how real progress happens. Not from one great day, but from many ordinary ones done faithfully. So give effort its place. Use it to begin, but don't stop there. Because effort might open the door, but it's consistency that moves the furniture in. That turns a visit into a home. That turns a spark into a fire. Consistency is the difference between someone who's curious and someone who's committed. It's how you prove you're serious about your goals, your growth, your word. Anyone can be consistent for a day. That's easy. But what you do every day, that's what defines you. People may not say it out loud, but they're always watching your patterns. They don't trust what you say as much as they trust what you repeat. If you show up once, it's impressive. If you show up every day, it's reliable. And people follow reliability. They invest in reliability. They promote reliability. And it's not just about what others see. It's about what you believe about yourself. Every time you follow through on a habit, you cast a vote for the kind of person you want to be. You do it enough times and your identity begins to shift. You're no longer someone trying to be disciplined. You become someone who is disciplined. That's the power of consistency. It shapes how you see yourself. I've said it before. Success doesn't come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do consistently. You can't build anything on an every now and then effort. Not a business, not a body, not a mindset. Consistency is the engine. And the longer you run it, the more it compounds. It's like a snowball. At first it's small, barely moving, but roll it long enough and it starts picking up speed. It starts pulling its own weight, and eventually it becomes unstoppable. That's how habits work. That's how growth works. Slow at first, then faster. And then one day, it looks like momentum. But it's really just consistency paid forward. Now the opposite is also true. Inconsistency chips away at everything you're building. You miss one day. It doesn't seem like much. But you miss another, then another. And now the habit's broken. The standard's lower. And your belief in yourself starts to slip. Not because you're not capable, but because inconsistency robs you of confidence. It quietly steals your momentum. And here's what's tricky. People don't usually notice they're losing momentum. It doesn't announce itself. It just slows things down, delays progress, dulls the edge. You still feel busy. You still feel like you're trying, but you're not building the same way anymore because the force behind it, consistency, isn't there. That's why the best results don't always go to the most talented. They go to the most consistent, the person who keeps showing up, who honors the process, who builds slow, steady, and deliberate. They may not look flashy, but give it time, and they'll outrun the ones who started with a sprint. So if you want to prove you're serious, don't make noise. Make patterns. Show up so often that people don't wonder if you will. They assume it. Build such steady habits that missing a day feels strange. Because when consistency becomes part of who you are, results become part of your life. Most people don't have a starting problem. They have a staying problem. They get excited, they get inspired, they get moving, but give it a few days, a few weeks, maybe a month, and they're gone. Not because they weren't capable, but because they thought effort was enough. They paid the entry fee, but they never signed the contract. The truth is, starting feels good. It feels productive. You buy the planner, you make the to-do list, you block off the calendar, and for a moment, you feel like you've already changed. But that feeling fades. Because momentum doesn't come from preparing, it comes from doing, repeatedly. And that's where most people fall off. They expect to feel motivated every day. They expect the excitement to carry them. But motivation is loud at the beginning and quiet during the work. It shows up on day 1, disappears by day 4, and if you're relying on it, you're in trouble. Because the real work begins after the enthusiasm runs out. That's when doubt starts whispering, this isn't working. Maybe I picked the wrong goal. Maybe I'm just not the type. And if you haven't built a deeper reason to continue, if you haven't decided ahead of time to stay, you start listening. You start slowing down. And before long, you've quit. Not loudly, quietly. You don't tear the plan up, you just stop following it. You tell yourself you'll get back to it. Tomorrow, next week, when life calms down. And slowly, the habit dies. Not from failure, but from neglect. That's how most dreams go. Not with a crash, but with a drift. I've met plenty of people who've told me, I've tried everything. But when you look closer, what they really mean is, I started a few things. I got frustrated, I stopped. That's not trying everything. That's starting often and finishing nothing. And it doesn't lead anywhere, except back to where you started. The people who win are the ones who push through the middle. Not just the beginning, not just the end, the middle. The part where results are slow, motivation is gone, and nobody's watching. That's where success is earned. Not because it's flashy, but because it's consistent. You've got to decide ahead of time that the work is worth it, even when it's quiet, even when it's repetitive, even when it feels like nothing's happening. Because something is happening. Discipline is being built. Momentum is being earned. Confidence is being formed. But you only get to collect it if you stay. So if you've started something and already feel like giving up, don't. That tension you feel, that's the price of progress. You're in the gap between effort and reward. Keep going. Most people quit here, but you're not most people. You don't just pay the entry fee. You keep showing up to honor the contract. You can sprint your way into a good week, but you can't sprint your way into a good life. If you want results that last, you've got to build systems. Not short bursts of energy, not scattered motivation, systems. Motivation is great when it shows up. It'll get you moving. It'll fire you up. But the problem with motivation is it's not dependable. Some mornings it's there. Most mornings, it's not. If your progress depends on how you feel when you wake up, you'll always be starting over. That's why systems are better. Systems don't ask how you feel. They just run. I've always said, discipline is doing what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like doing it. And systems help you do that. They remove the guesswork. They turn habits into default actions. You don't have to think about them, you just follow them. And that's what makes them powerful. They protect you from inconsistency. You brush your teeth every day, not because you're inspired, but because it's part of the system. You drive to work, make coffee, tie your shoes, not because you're passionate about it, but because it's automatic. That's what you want from your habits. You want your routines working for you while your feelings catch up. Start with one small system. Something simple. Maybe you write your goals down every morning. Maybe you prep your meals on Sunday. Maybe you review your habits at the end of the day. It doesn't have to be complicated, but it has to be repeatable. Because what you can repeat, you can build on. You don't need 100 changes. You need one habit that sticks, one routine you don't skip, one rhythm that keeps you grounded when the day gets noisy. That's how systems work. They stabilize your discipline. And when discipline is stable, results start showing up automatically. Now, here's where most people get it wrong. They try to change everything overnight. They make a long list of habits, overhaul their routine, set 5 alarms, and within a week, they're exhausted because they were sprinting, and sprints are short. You can't build a life on exhaustion. You build it on rhythm. Sprints wear you out. Systems carry you. One is reactive. The other is reliable. One burns hot and fades. The other builds strength over time. And if you want to keep showing up day after day, month after month, you need a structure that supports you when motivation doesn't. Your goal shouldn't be to try harder. Your goal should be to make it easier to do the right thing. That's what systems do. They reduce friction. They reduce decisions. They reduce resistance. You set the track once, and then you run on it. Even when you're tired. Even when you're distracted. Even when the mood isn't right. So stop chasing intensity. Start building consistency. Stop trying to push harder. Start designing your habits better. Because when you stop sprinting and start structuring, you don't just get better results. You get a better life. At first, you show up because you want results. You want the business to grow. You want the scale to move. You want the numbers to climb. And that's fine. But somewhere along the way, something shifts. The deeper reward shows up, not just in what you achieve, but in who you become. Because every time you keep a promise to yourself, you're telling your mind, we can be trusted. Every time you show up without applause, you're building integrity. And every time you finish what you start, even when it's inconvenient, you're proving to yourself that you're not the same person you used to be. That's the real payoff. Consistency builds identity. It doesn't just move you forward. It reshapes the way you see yourself. You start to believe it. You start to expect more from yourself, not out of pressure, but out of alignment. Because now showing up isn't something you're trying to do. It's something you do. It's who you are. And once that shift happens, everything changes. You're no longer negotiating with yourself. You're no longer wondering if you'll do it. You've decided. The action is automatic. The question isn't, will I keep going? It's, how far can I go? That's when you know the transformation is real. The world sees the results, but you feel the change. You feel it in your thoughts, in your posture, in your decisions. The old version of you, the one that started strong but faded, that version gets replaced, slowly, quietly, but permanently. You stop needing external validation. You don't need someone to tell you you're doing a good job. You already know, because you were there. You saw the work. You felt the discipline. You earned the shift. And nobody can take that from you. The funny thing is, when you become that kind of person, results chase you. Opportunities find you. Not because you went looking for them, but because you became the kind of person who attracts them. Through your habits, through your consistency, through your quiet, steady commitment to excellence. And here's the part people miss. The best version of you isn't built in the big moments. It's built in the repetition, in the quiet, in the daily contract you sign with yourself, the one that commits to not quitting, the one that shows up anyway, the one that defines who you are now. You can chase all the results you want, but if you don't become someone different along the way, they won't last. The foundation won't hold. But when you focus on becoming, on showing up, on following through, then everything you build stands on solid ground. So keep going, not just for the rewards, not just for the recognition, but for the person you're becoming, because that's the real win. That's the real work. And that's the kind of success that can't be taken from you. Effort is important. It gets the ball rolling. It's your signal to the world that you're ready to begin. But beginnings don't build legacies. Starting doesn't secure success. It just opens the door. What keeps the door open? What brings the results, the respect, the transformation is consistency. That's the contract. That's the quiet agreement you sign with your future every single day. Not just when it's easy, not just when it's exciting, but especially when it isn't. The people who win long-term aren't the ones with the biggest burst of energy. They're the ones who keep showing up when it's boring, when it's inconvenient, when it doesn't feel productive. But they do it anyway, because they understand something most people don't. Doing it once isn't the point. Doing it again is. You don't have to be extreme. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be steady, because steady compounds. Steady builds trust. Steady builds identity. Steady builds results. So the next time you feel yourself slipping, the next time you're tempted to start something new instead of finishing what you started, remember this: effort is what got you in, but consistency is what will keep you in. Sign the contract, not once, every day. Show up, follow through, and build something that lasts.